Hello, welcome to Oxford Heirlooms. In this video, we're going to set both sleeves into the body of the bubble. Now, I have already set one sleeve in, and I want to show you this little trick that I think I kind of invented it for myself. But when you're trying to ease these little boy sleeves that are tailored and aren't supposed to have any puckers along the seam of the sleeve, the larger your seam allowance, the harder it can be. Now this one has 1/4 inch seam allowance, which isn't really that hard, but for one, I struggle doing French seams on sleeves, so I don't do that. So sometimes I sew sleeves in with an entredot seam, which tends to work well. But this time, I'm going to do just a regular seam. And then from the inside, we have a 1/4 inch seam, and I have zigzagged to finish off the edge of the sleeve. So let me show you how I do this. Now, I'm going to start with a straight seam in the body of the bubble. Now, we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so going around the edge of the armhole opening, what happens with these armhole openings is that in order for the round armhole opening to fit the sleeve, it really needs to flare. Entredot, when I do it with entredot, that seems to take care of that. But when I don't do it with entredot, I struggle with getting it in without any puckers. So I'm going to, with a 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to simply sew, not baste, but I'm going to sew a line along the opening of the armhole, just keeping it right at about a 1/4 inch, maybe even just like a scant 1/4 inch. Make sure my little seams are pointing in the right directions when I get to them. I'm coming up onto the shoulder seam next. So I'm just sewing along the edge of the armhole, 1/4 or about a scant 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the armhole opening. I'm not going real fast because I want to maintain control of my curve. Now notice I go all the way around the edge of the armhole opening. I don't stop some distance away from the side of the bubble. I go all the way to the end. Okay, now that I have that sewn, let me clip my threads. Okay, now my experience has taught me that these little sleeves, particularly down here where it curves to go under the arm, it'll fit the sleeve better if the fabric will flare. I struggle with when they tell you to ease it in, it doesn't always ease in nicely for me. So about every 3/8 of an inch or about every 1/2 an inch, I'm going to cut a little notch in the batiste of the armhole, and my notch is not going to extend farther or past the line that I sewed. Just notch it all the way around. And like I said, if you have a larger seam allowance, like a 5/8 inch, this method works really well to do this. It's not quite as necessary with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but it does help. Okay, now I'm going to lay this flat, the armhole opening, and I'm going to bring my sleeve over, and I'm going to line up the dot in my shoulder seam, and I'm going to pin that into place. Now I'm going to come over here to the edge of the sleeve and line up the side of the garment, which oftentimes, this, when you're trying to ease it in, it's kind of hard to get that to line up. But I'm going to go ahead and line that up. And as you can see through the fabric, the little notches tend to flare out a little bit. Now I'm going to come back to the shoulder seam, and I'm going to begin easing in from the shoulder seam and pin it as I go. And the little notches will simply flare around the top of the sleeve. Just line them up. Use as many pins as you need to. Don't feel like, you got to be stingy with pins. And when you get down to where it curves on the armhole, just kind of ease that into place, and the notches will open up. And it just eases right into place for me. And it fits perfectly. Yay! Okay, now I need to pin the other side. I'm going to go ahead and pin it at the side seam and then ease it starting from the shoulder seam and work my way out towards the underarm. But go ahead and pin your underarm into place. And like I said, start up here at the shoulder seam and just ease it into place and let those little notches flare open as it fits, because it'll curve around the top of the sleeve. And then when you get down to the underarm where it's more on a bias, you can stretch it a little bit. But this gets this all pinned into place without any puckers. Okay, now from the side that I sewed on, not the sleeve side, but the side that I sewed on, I'm going to come back. Let me get my threads out of here. And I'm going to sew immediately to the left of this thread where I sewed before, because I don't want that thread to show on the body of the bubble. Take my pins out as I come to them and just slowly sew, just going immediately to the left of that thread. And you can kind of stretch and ease it into place as you go, so you don't have any puckers. Okay, this will take me a minute to get this sewn all the way along the armhole opening, so I'll be right back. Okay, I have that first seam sewn, and as you can see, the notches, they flare out going around the underarm, and they flare out again going over the top of the collar. And as I check this on both sides, particularly from the sleeve side, I don't have any puckers up at the top of my sleeve. So I'm going to set my machine to a zigzag, and I'm going to finish this seam off now. Just coming back along the seam that we just sewed and finish off that seam. There. Okay, so that finishes that off nicely. And when we check it from the outside, we can see I'll need to press this, but I don't have any puckers either on the body of the bubble or anywhere along the sleeve itself. Okay, so that turned out real nice. Okay, and as I said, that's just a little trick that I kind of devised for myself. I really don't remember learning that anywhere. You know, like I said, I may have just invented it and I don't realize, and I had forgotten that I started to do that. But, you know, for easing little boy sleeves, even though that needs a little bit of a pressing, for easing little boy sleeves into those armholes, sewing that line and then clipping the little notches so that it'll ease around the curves is just something that I like to do. Okay, so setting the sleeves into the body of the garment was what we were doing today. Okay, in the next video, we will continue to construct the bubble by creating the French seams along the sides of the garment, and then we'll start to work on the leg hole openings. But getting the sleeves set in today was what we were doing. Thank you.